Welcome to another edition of Hometown Happenings. I'm Supervisor George Hoehmann, and this is my opportunity to be able to speak directly with residents and talk about some of the things going on here in town, as well as presenting some very interesting guests who can talk about work that they're involved with. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about the inspirational rededication that we had of our 9/11 memorial here in Clarkstown. We just celebrated the 15th anniversary of 9/11, a very devastating day here for the residents of Clarkstown and indeed for our country. We rededicated the memorial, fueled by donations from residents and from businesses. It's a wonderful memorial outside of Town Hall that accurately represents the 20 names of the residents of Clarkstown who perished in 9/11 and the over 80 residents who died across Rockland County. I encourage you to stop by Town Hall to see the new fountain and the new memorial and to spend a few moments in contemplation and reflection on that day. In addition, in keeping up with my pledge for looking at all avenues and aspects of town government, we've looked to do reviews on a number of different town departments. Our Bonadillo report has just been submitted back to the town, and I look forward to working closely with our police department through our administration and the PBA to begin to look at implementing some of these cost-saving measures within the report. The Bonadillo report actually outlines over $5 million in annual savings that could be achieved if we begin to implement various changes within the police department. We're pledged to not do anything that will negatively affect public safety, but we are looking to make sure that we can be more efficient to improve services and, more importantly, save money for the taxpayers here within the town. Coming up on this show, I look forward to the guests that we have joining us. We have Clare Sheridan from the Rockland County Historical Society, followed by Bill Mann, a veteran of the Korean War and a former Rockland County Veteran of the Year. And we'll close out our show with our newest council member, Adrienne Carey. All that and more coming up on this edition of Hometown Happenings. My first guest is Clare Sheridan from the Historical Society of Rockland County. Welcome, Clare.
Thanks for having me.
So, Clare, you've worn a lot of hats over at the Historical Society of Rockland County, and maybe you could, for the benefit of our viewers, talk a little bit about the Historical Society, and a little bit about your background, and some of the things that you're doing over there.
Sure. I got involved in 2009 and became the president, the acting executive director, and a trustee. And currently I'm chairing a few committees, including historic preservation and membership, as well as the exhibitions. And I also submit the weekly column in the Rockland Review, This Week in Rockland, and I moderate the radio show on WRCR called Crossroads of Rockland History. So lots of different things.
And when does Crossroads of Rockland air on the radio show?
Yes, it airs on the third Monday of every month, and right now it's coming on at 9:30 a.m., right after the morning show with Steve Pozell and Jordan Baker.
And that's 1700 a.m.?
1700 a.m., absolutely, and you can stream it also at WRCR.com.
Right, great. And Clare, one of the things you mentioned, you chair the Historical Preservation Committee, and that's a very, very important committee. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the work that you've been involved with that committee, I know, and some of the help that you've frankly rendered to me in our town here in Clarkstown as it relates to some of the buildings that we're trying to preserve as well.
Sure. Well, the historic preservation is a large part of the mission of the Historical Society of Rockland County, and we do a lot of outreach. We do a lot of advocacy work, and we also actually have restored the buildings at the site of the Historical Society. So the Jacob Lawveld House and the Anglo-Dutch barn, the Jacob Lawveld barn, which is circa 1865, was recently restored. So by example, we preserve the buildings of Rockland County, but we also are involved in advocacy and education. So we certainly got involved when the town of Clarkstown purchased the Traphagen parcel that is adjacent to Germans Park. And we worked with the other local groups, Heritage of West Nyack, the Municipal Historian, and the Clarkstown Historic Review Board, in advocating that the town preserve that parcel, the entire parcel, as part of the park. That certainly has been a wonderful outcome, which is that in fact the town did preserve it, and even with the change of administration, there's been even more interest in the property with the current, with you and the current board, in wanting to make that a community place that can be heritage, history, education. So we do that. We have a small committee. We have 6 members, and we go wherever there's an old place that need to be saved, and we really do try to do everything we can to advocate for preservation.
And I know while it's not in the town of Clarkstown, but the John Greenhouse down in Nyack, you've taken some role in the Historical Society of Rockland County has as well with that, and what are some of the other properties that you've been involved with to advocate for?
Well, certainly one that comes to mind right now is the Crow House, the home of Henry Varnum Poor, which is here in Clarkstown. It's on South Mountain Road. It's owned by the town of Ramapo, and I am working on a special steering committee to help with the preservation of that place, which is going to be needing significant restoration. And then, of course, there are the waterfront in Nyack is another area where we are really trying to advocate, keeping that as free of massive development as possible, and certainly responsible development. Working with the town of Orangetown as they are looking at their historic areas and possibly expanding those areas and or changing the code slightly. So they're small things, but together, we really can make a difference. And I think in terms of the John Greenhouse, that was a long-standing effort for many, many years of a blighted piece of property that was extremely important. Underneath, there was a historic house there, and I've got to give credit to Save the John Greenhouse that worked on it for many, many years, and now the John Green Preservation Coalition, who actually convinced Wells Fargo, Aquin Financial, to donate that property to a 501c3 historic preservation group. So that again is a big community effort, and I certainly was happy to help. I give all full credit to them though for doing it.
Yeah, no, it's great to see here in Rockland County and Clarkstown. I know when I became supervisor earlier this year, I put elevated the Trapegan property and a focus on it because to me it was just a lost opportunity. The town purchased and acquired that property for $900,000, almost 7 years ago. And we just kind of spun our wheels. Really not much was happening with it. And I'm delighted that we were able to announce $500,000 in funding within the past month that the town will be receiving. And I'm really excited that the Vanderbilt Bucky house will be authentically restored, and will be open to the public hopefully within the next year. That we're going to be doing more things on that property, and as well as the Trapegan house, which dates back, the Vanderbilt Bucky house dates back to 1730, but the Trapegan house that's there dates back to 1820, and it's right next to our town park and Jamon's Park, our Little League fields for the West Nyack Little League, and some public fields that are open to residents as well. And it just makes too much sense for us, not to really make that a focus, make it a place of accommodation, a place for people to, community groups to utilize, and residents to be able to start to explore the property and explore the rich history that's there. I mean, that's that Vanderbilt Bucky house is the second oldest house in Rockland County, we believe, and it's still standing. And if the walls could talk, the stories that they would tell, but the history that area, that our county has witnessed, primarily the colonial and Revolutionary, war era, but still the incredible history, and to be able to use that property as a focus to tell the story of the history of our town and the people that lived here. So very grateful for all the efforts that you've provided to myself and my administration in really elevating, the Trapphagen and Vanderbilt Bucky property to where it really needs to be for us to move forward. But that being said, you're working on a whole bunch of things with us. We have the upcoming History Month, and we're going to be commemorating our 225th anniversary as a town, which we celebrate this year. And so maybe we could kind of dive into that a little bit. You could talk about some of the upcoming History Month events.
Sure. So the 225th committee is made up of community members and heritage and history groups, and as well as members of the town staff and the municipal historians from the area. It's been really fun working on it, and we've put together a wonderful group of events and programs and things to commemorate the 225th. First, an exhibition here in Town Hall that will open on October 5th. And that's largely been contributions from the community. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be great. There'll also be an unveiling of essays and art that the Clarkstown students will be doing. There's a contest right now out there that is asking students to write or make art related to the anniversary, so those will be on view. A lecture series has been put together, and that will be a series of lectures that will be taking place primarily here at Town Hall that will be very entertaining. It'll be free to the public. Those will be on Thursday evenings. And then, of course, that will all be round out with the Fall Festival, which will be taking place at the Trapphagen parcel, which includes the historic house. And that's a wonderful community history and heritage event that the Historical Society is proud to be a part of with Heritage of West Nyack and with the town. So there's also going to be a web presence for the anniversary. There will be an interactive timeline that is going to include vintage images and video and audio, oral histories. So, there's really something for everyone, and it's been something that it's been a pleasure to work on and help with, and there's so much history. There's so much history in our county and so much history in Clarkstown. So it's a wonderful opportunity to really share that with the public.
Right. Claire, you just kind of touched on all these different events. It's really great for that as a town we're doing this. But from your perspective, somebody that loves history, and why is it important for our town to commemorate our 225th and for people to become involved in celebrating the history of our town?
Well, history in general is important to have as part of the way you think about things. There's that great adage that people who don't know history are doomed to repeat it, and certainly knowing what happened in the past is so important to understand how you fit into today and what's going to be happening in the future. And so it may seem trivial to celebrate an anniversary, but in fact what it does is, I think it does two things. It gives a person a place, a place in their community to help them understand it more, but it also connects people with each other. And I think that when people reminisce together and people think about what was happening in the past, there's a connection that happens that really can't happen without anything else. And I think when people learn history and study history, it gives people, certainly students and young people, a way to think critically about things. So not to just memorize rote facts and not just to repeat dates out loud. What it does is it allows people to think about how things happen in a critical way, which is incredibly important when you're thinking about making decisions today, whatever profession you're in. Being a critical thinker is extremely important, and I think what history does is allows people to learn how to be critical thinkers. And so, you know, it's a connection, and it's, you know, for those two reasons, I think it's important.
Very, very well said. Again, Claire, I want to thank you for your efforts in helping us with our 225th commemoration of the history of our town. I know that we're going to have first-class exhibits. It's really going to be an opportunity for people to learn about some of the notable people that have lived in our community and some of the events that have taken place throughout our history. Again, I want to thank you for your efforts, not just here in helping us, but also your efforts in historic preservation here in Rockland County, and thank you for being such a wonderful guest.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Stay tuned for coming up, Bill Mahan, Rockland County Veteran of the Year. My next guest is Bill Mahan, a Korean War-era veteran who's also the former Rockland County Veteran of the Year. Thank you, Bill, for joining us.
It's a pleasure, George. Thank you.
So, Bill, maybe for the benefit of our viewers who are watching the show, we could talk a little bit about your background.
Sure.
You know, where you're from, and then I want to talk a little bit about your service as well, and then some of the veterans organizations you're involved with. So maybe a little bit about your background. Where are you from, Bill?
I was born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut, George. Mm-hmm. Entered the service from New Haven, also went up to Camp Devens, I'm sorry, Camp Devens in Massachusetts, and went to basic training in Aberdeen Proving Ground, Aberdeen, Maryland.
Mm-hmm. Now, you live here in Rockland County. How long have you lived in Rockland County?
I moved here in 1962.
Okay. And what did you do in your professional life, your career?
Sure. I was, after I got out of the service, I joined IBM in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And I was rapidly, thank God, promoted to New Haven, and again rapidly promoted to New York City. Lived then in Queens from 57 to 62. So I have been a New York State citizen since 1957.
Right.
And in 62, came up here looking for a house.
Mm-hmm. So you raised your family, I would assume, here pretty much in...
Basically, yeah.
In Rockland County and Clarkstown. You're a New City resident, correct?
Correct, yes.
Right. And so you saw the light. You came over from Connecticut, you know, thank goodness, and came over to Rockland County, especially, particularly to Clarkstown, and we're the better for it. You know,
Thank
Bill,
you.
maybe we could talk a little bit about your service.
Sure.
How long were you in the service for?
I was in the service for, it depends on how you look at it, George, but in my day, you had to serve 8 years, but only 2 had to be active. Mm-hmm. So I did 2 active and 6 reserve.
Okay. What year did you go in?
I went in 52.
52. So
52
right.
to 54, and then 54 to 60.
Now, what branch of the service were you in?
Army.
Army.
Proud to say.
Proud to say. Absolutely. My dad was also in the Army in Korea as well. He was in artillery. So, what were your assignments in the service?
Well, I went into the Ordnance Corps down in Aberdeen, Maryland, and that's where I did my basic. Then I had my college degree, so they said to me, "Bill, you're going to teach." So I said, "If you say so, I'm going to teach." So I I was in at that time the small arms section for the Ordnance Corps. And so I taught that, and I rapidly rose in rank. This is unbelievable. A lot of people say, what? And within 14 months, I was a staff sergeant. Now, believe it or not, you come in when you're drafted as an E1. So now it's up to the level of an E6. However, the government cut back everybody's pay to an E5. But anyway, I was a staff sergeant. That means 3 up and 1 down. And I did that in 14 months.
Wow, that's
Fairly
fairly rapid rise.
I'm very proud of it.
Yeah.
And so therefore I was course head of the Ordnance School for the 4 weeks, the last 4 weeks. It was an 8-week school, and I was course head for the last 4 weeks.
And so in your 2 years in active duty, you so you were really an instructor, and you moved forward with fairly rapid promotion, and then ran the course. That's in the last 4 weeks of the course. What are some of your memories of your service? You know, what would you view as like the highlight of your service in the military?
Oh, the highlight is tough. I'll tell you, it was good. I have no regrets about being in the service. In fact, the last 8 to 10 months, I forget which, they said to me, "You're not going to be reassigned," which meant that I was going to stay in Aberdeen. So I took the opportunity to have my wife come down. We rented a trailer. We lived in a trailer off post. And I have absolutely no regrets. I wanted to serve. In fact, I was actually 4F.
Oh, really?
But I covered it. And because I did want to serve, George, and I served.
So for the benefit of our viewers who may not know, 4F is actually, you have a disability that would prevent you from serving, but
Correct.
you actually hit that so you would be able to serve.
Correct.
Wow.
Yep.
That's great. And then after your active duty service, did you stay involved in the reserves in any way, or?
Not in the reserve. I was in inactive reserves, but I've been in veteran affairs related activities up to my eyeballs. For instance, I'm president of the board at the Montrose Veterans Home in Montrose, New York, which is on a federal facility, and we have 252 residents. It's a big place. The average age is 87.
Wow.
And 90% of them are wheelchair bound. And what most people don't realize is that the first requirement is you must need nursing care, skilled nursing care. And you can actually bring your wife with you if she needs skilled nursing care. And what people don't realize is the wife can go in independently, George. So you can be fine, as frequently happens, and your wife needs skilled nursing care. You can bring them. You can have them inducted, not inducted. You can have them brought in to the
facility,
to the veterans home.
That's an incredible place, and there's that's great service that you're offering, giving back to vets. I know that you've been recognized for some of your additional service as well. You were Rockland County Veteran of the Year.
Yes.
And you're also in the New York State Veterans Hall of Fame.
Right.
And you were also recognized, I think, by the New York State Senate, was it?
Correct.
As within a veterans designation and an award as well.
Yes.
And it's really reflective of your many years of volunteerism on behalf of other vets and veterans causes, correct?
Correct.
So maybe we could talk a little bit about that. You've been involved in the New City American Legion. You were post commander as well there?
Oh, I've been post commander, I've been county commander. I have a state office as far as I've been for maybe 8 years, vice chairman of the legislative committee for the state of New York. Right. Therefore, frequent trips to Albany, particularly when they're in session, which is basically, as you know, probably from January to mid-June. But also, with computers, you can do your work from home too. We have district legislative chairs, and we have bills that we support, and we communicate quite often just by emails and occasionally use Skype.
Mm-hmm.
So, in fact, I worked for a company for 24 years after I left IBM, and they were headquartered in Florida.
Oh, really?
But I worked, with
Remotely.
the computer. Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very true. It's amazing how small the world has actually become.
Mhm.
And if you think back when you were in active duty, back in Korea over 60 years ago now, how different the world is. I mean, there was no such thing as remote, telecommuting or any, computers or what have you. So
Correct.
It's a very different world, but it's very true. Computers and telecommunications, email and Skype allow people to get involved with a lot of different things. What's impressive, though, Bill, is that you've been involved in a lot of these different things before all that. You were involved with the Legion for a number of years, as well as the over at Montrose. One of the other things that you do, Bill, and you do such a wonderful job, and we look forward to it every year, is the annual Memorial Day commemorants that we do as a town with our seniors. It's typically the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, and you're the master of ceremony. You've been doing that for a number of years now.
About 6 to 8, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Enjoy it. Love it.
No, you do such. You offer just such a presence of dignity and honor and respect, through that ceremony, and any of the folks that go to it. And we play that, we record it, and we play it on our public access channel. So folks have likely seen you before they've actually gotten to learn a little bit about you and about your service. What do you think are some of the biggest things that are facing our Korean War era vets now?
Well, one example that comes to my mind immediately, George, is sickness. We started out, for instance, at the Vets Home with 21 beds for dementia patients. Now we're up to 48. So as the population ages, dementia is our curse. And that's one example that, we even have Vietnam veterans now in dementia. So it's a sad, they say it's the long goodbye,
Yeah.
which indeed it is. Yeah.
Very much so, very, very much so. And I know that, one of the things that we see very frequently with vets is, throughout all the different generations, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, vets went away, they did their job, they did their time in the service, they got out. Very many of them wanted to get as quickly away from that experience as they could. They didn't look back. Oftentimes they buried whatever they were, whatever those negative experiences might be inside them. And we find out years later that they're dealing with some of those issues. And more importantly, I think what becomes problematic for veterans as they age, that some of those experiences will come out when the busyness of a work career kind of, goes away. When people retire, they have more time on their hands, and I've heard different veterans refer to it as the demons come out.
Correct.
The demons come out. But I know that a lot of the work that you've done, I think the first time I met you, Bill, was about 16 years ago, and I can remember specifically where it was. It was in the late Senator Tom Morahan's office.
Oh, Tom.
And you were an advisor to the Senator on Veterans Affairs, and
Correct.
I remember I was going in for a meeting on some issues with people with disabilities, and you were in the office in one of the other rooms, and the Senator introduced me to you and said, this is the guy who does more for veterans, he had said to me at the time, than anybody else in Rockland County. So it's a testament to you and the efforts that you put forward in all of these different roles that you've had, at Montrose, over with the American Legion, and certainly, with the efforts that you've done here within the town with our senior clubs as well.
Thank you. And I had never realized that. Tom was a good friend. He was a member of the New City Post also, with me.
Yeah, but Senator Morehead was just legendary in terms of his public service, and also himself a veteran as well, obviously.
Yes.
So, gone, but certainly not forgotten by myself and by so many others. Well, Bill, that's about all the time we have for today. So I want to thank you for being such a wonderful guest, and I want to thank you for your service to our country, and I want to thank you for your service to other veterans.
Thank you, George.
Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up will be Councilwoman Adrienne Carey. Stay tuned. Our final guest on today's show is Clarkstown Councilwoman Adrienne Carey. Welcome, Councilwoman Carey.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here today.
So, Adrienne, I know that for the benefit of our viewers, I'd really like for you to be able to tell a little bit about your story, what brings you into public service, and maybe a little bit about your background. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about yourself, where you came from, and what brings you into government service.
Okay. Well, I'm a lifelong Rockland resident. We moved here at a very young age with my family. And as I finished school and I became engaged and was married, my husband and I decided where we wanted to live and raise our children, and it was here in Nanuet. So we have 4 daughters, and we've been here for raising our children, lifelong Nanuet residents. So this is where our roots have been, and it's a beautiful place to be.
And I know you took my place on the town council when I was elected to supervisor. There became a vacancy, and you assumed the position in April of this year. And you've already kind of rolled up your sleeves and jumped in, quite quickly on a number of different things. But you bring a very important perspective and background to public service. You come from the healthcare profession, and maybe you could talk a little bit about your background in healthcare as a nurse.
Okay. Well, at a very young age, I had a lot of compassion for people, and not just in a nurturing way, but doing the right thing and trying to champion their cause. I was very fortunate to, at a career day, discover nursing and what nursing was about, and my father was very instrumental in pushing me in that way, and keeping very goal-oriented and trying to pursue your dream. And my dream was to become a nurse. So I actually got my foot in the door at a young age of 14, 15 years old, and found jobs that I would really be connected to touch the lives of people, and not always at their best. So I continued on through nursing school. My mom.
Where did you go? Where did you go to nursing school?
I went to Rockland County BOCES in high school, and when I graduated, I was eligible to sit for the licensed practical nursing exam. So I became a nurse at 17 years old. After high school, I continued on to Dominican College, staying local within Rockland County, keeping the connections that I nurtured. It was wonderful. It was a great 4-year experience. Graduated with a bachelor's in nursing of science. I didn't share yet, but my mother and I actually graduated nursing school at the same time. When I finished high school, we were the first mother-daughter team to graduate as nurses in the county. So that was actually very exciting. She continued on to RCC, and I continued on to Dominican College, and it was actually wonderful to be able to share a lot of ideas. I'm not sure so much about the studying, because as a teenager, I didn't have the patience to study with my mother, but it was wonderful. It really was a great experience for both of us.
Yeah, that's very unusual, mother-daughter nursing team. So that's really a great story. But and I know that you bring that focus, as a nurse. You've kind of continued in, obviously with your career. You're now a nursing administrator. maybe you could talk a little bit about your current position in nursing.
Yeah, absolutely. Having the experience of being frontline staff nurse, had some wonderful mentors that actually guided me into management and really took a lot of the key components of what it takes to be a really good leader, and especially in the healthcare profession, it's hard to really balance, still having that feeling of compassion and understanding for a person as you're moving through a management, when you have to talk about processes of productivity, cost savings, budgeting. It's a business, but you never want to compromise the safety of patients ever. So I feel like my current position now in managing large teams of excess of hundreds of people, not just mentoring the people, hiring of staff and guiding them and changing processes. I have to be Joint Commission ready. There's a lot of state regulatory policies and protocols that we have to always be ready for. So it's also implementing change. And change is very difficult, especially, like I said, when you're dealing with people's lives, you never want to compromise the safety aspect. So I feel having those experiences, I'm able to draw on those as I'm working with Clarkstown residents in my current position on the town council. It's not always an easy thing, but if you listen to what people are looking for, and doing the right thing all the time. I think that's the best thing that I can bring forward.
Right. Now, you absolutely bring some tremendous depth of experience as an administrator and somebody from the helping professions as a nurse in the medical field. That's a great perspective, a much needed perspective to bring into public service, and it's refreshing to have you as a member of the council. What's really kind of inspired you? I know you've been involved in a lot of different community groups and community activities. What really has kind of inspired you to kind of take up the challenge, to get involved in public service? Would you say it's nursing in addition to some of your community service? I mean, what's really been the driving factor for you?
I believe it's the fact that we've really maintained our roots here, and making a decision that raising our children, we want our children to come back here, and we share a lot of the same concerns, and talking about it. I always felt that you can't just talk about a problem or situation. You really need to kind of jump in some way. Based on my community efforts, being involved, whether it's the church, my parish, teaching the younger children, and again, being connected with our older seniors. I think those are the driving forces of really what I do, that connection. I work with Meals on Wheels. I get to see firsthand how much it means to touch a person's life in a very different aspect that's outside of the hospital. How I feel from a nursing perspective and my own personality and sense of ethic, it's nice to just bridge that gap to other organizations. Coaching. I'm involved with Nanuet Little League. I've coached for Clarkstown soccer clubs, Orangetown Mighty Midgets. It's about the children, nurturing them, teaching them, whether it's about a sport, but it's a team approach to everything that they do. So I think that's very instrumental. And with our seniors, keeping them connected to what's really important, what's important to them, and how we can make things a little bit better for them. Right.
So I know you've also helped on a number of things, and you kind of I've been involved in our Knock Registry, which we were able to bring forward, and you also made some policy recommendations as it relates to our vehicle and travel policy as well. So why don't we start with some of the things that you've been involved with, the Knock Registry. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that and the success story that really has become for our residents.
People have been disturbed based on by people that just randomly come and knock on their door. It's really, they're unsolicited. People. It's about their quality of life. To come home, I know how precious my time is with my family, especially in the evenings, and to be disturbed by a random, ringing of a bell and people persistently coming to acquire services that are really unwanted. It was great that we took a step in this direction to create a registry that actually deterred solicitors. And it's a very easy process. It was nice once we got this up and running. It's a very easy thing to do. You can register online on the Clarkstown website. It's basic information, your name, your address, and your email. And within 24 hours, you're getting a decal that you can, place on your front door or at the front of your home. And it's really been very successful. It's been a great deterrent. We have over 3,000 residents that have registered, and I'm continually encouraging those folks to register. Organizations are required to reach out to the town if they're looking to go out and acquire services from our residents. They have to check in with the registry and see who they can approach and who they cannot approach. Right. So it's been great.
I think the other piece that it gives people peace of mind, in particular our seniors, because we know quite often there'll be different people that will try scams. It's happened, or there'll be different folks that'll knock on people's doors, and unfortunately we've had more seniors fall prey to some of these scams. And while you can't stop the unscrupulous people, at least you take some of the pressure off on our seniors as it relates to people knocking on their doors. If they don't want someone to knock on their door, they sign up with the Knock Registry, and it doesn't happen. So in the moment that we have left, maybe you could talk a little bit about the new vehicle policy. I know that you had really spearheaded that. Within our town, and we made some changes to the vehicle and travel policy. So maybe you could touch base on that for our viewers.
Sure. It was important to actually look at another way that we could actually consolidate and save a bit of money. We had a numerous amount of cars that were town employees had for their own use, 24/7. We needed to have a little bit more oversight on that. So we took back about 12 classes of cars, looked at who had the cars for 24/7, and also who was really instrumental to have the car on a 24/7 emergency response basis. So having a car for yourself, for example, was something that's instrumental. Our fire inspectors, our highway department, is somebody that we look to when it's inclement weather, that they should have 24/7 so that they can respond to those types of care for our residents as well. So it's been wonderful. I mean, looking at who the need is really for, and on an emergency basis, who those responders need to be, and that they're just for town use. They're not for personal use as well, has been very instrumental in savings.
Well, I want to thank you for that, because it will save tens of thousands of dollars overall for our taxpayers, the residents who are taxpayers. And in addition to that, it should give us the opportunity. I know you're having some discussions, and we're working forward with our fleet manager to look at our fleet and culling some of the vehicles from the fleet. And we anticipate having an auction fairly soon, where we're going to be able to clear some vehicles out of our fleet, which is going to save us more money and actually produce some revenue as we have some of our older vehicles that will be declared surplus and will be sold off. So not only will we not be spending money to keep those vehicles going, but we'll actually be recouping some dollars as we clear some of these vehicles out of the fleet. And
absolutely,
really looking at the vehicle use and streamlining that and severely limiting it for the 24/7. We have vehicles for anybody while they're on work hours, but I think you made some great suggestions on that, and it's a credit to you, because we'll be saving lots of money for our residents on that as well.
Right.
So, Councilwoman Carey, I want to thank you for being such a wonderful guest on this program, and I want to thank you for your service to our community, both in office as a councilwoman, but also your service in the medical field. It's a testament to you and the person that you are, that you want to give back in so many different facets. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for having me here today.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank you for joining us. Especially I want to thank our guests, Clare Sheridan, Bill Mahan, and Councilwoman Adrienne Carey. If you have any questions or comments, please contact me in my office at 845-639-2050 or via our website at www.clarkstown.org. And please make sure that you follow us on Twitter and on Facebook.